Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Double M Radio Gamescast. We've got an action-packed show for you today, and by action-packed, I mean very slow-paced, so I hope you're all ready. As always, I am your host, Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Brett.
Hello.
Alex.
I'm very excited to be here tonight.
And Wyatt.
Oh no, the Western RPG shill is back! Quick, everyone! Grab your giant, oversized swords and run for the hills! Oh, he's returned!
I have to put my anime hair away.
Oh, there goes the Goku wig.
Toss out the pomade.
Get rid of that questionably translated English. Get it out of here.
I mean, that's still in plenty of Western games, so...
I'll take my jelly donuts and leave then. Fine.
Alright. Now that whatever that was is over, it's our 50th episode today. We've made a whole 50 of these.
Somehow.
And this one will be nothing special.
You know, Brett's exactly right. Because we're saving anything special for episode number 52, because that's the 1-year anniversary. To the day, actually, because we have we have not missed a week, so it will be...
That's epic gamer.
But we have missed a Wyatt,
a year
unfortunately.
You know, is that really unfortunate?
Oh.
I'm going to say you missed like
Wyatt.
3 Bretts at this point. It's nothing special.
This is
So the conversion rate is 3 Bretts to 1 Wyatt.
Yes.
Yeah, there's like 20 Bens to a Brett, so...
He's vastly depreciated.
Alright, so we're going to get started like we usually do with very brief news, but there will be a change in news going forward. We're only really going to talk about things now that are either super big, like E3 or press conference or like Nintendo Direct type stuff, or things that we're personally interested in, because we talk a lot about like weird financial stuff, and at this point, that's not that fun. So
Yeah.
unless the
But
weird
my
financial
stock
stuff is really, really fun, we're not going to talk about it on this. We might eventually do like a news thing as a separate thing, but that depends a lot on if we have time and all that jazz. So for now, let's get into the 2 little fun news stories we got. So I say fun, but this is quite sad for everyone affected. Rust lost every single European server.
Oh my god, what?
What?
So there
How
was
does
a
that
fire
happen?
in their data center in Strasbourg,
Went down in
France,
flames.
and every European server that was on that data center is completely lost.
No, that's so sad. How does that happen?
A fire in their data center.
See, this is why most like large companies have backups of servers on data centers. I mean, this is like the first time this has happened to this degree, at least in a game that was big enough to warrant it being like a top line news story. But yeah, so Rust lost basically every European server because of this.
Oh, Lord.
Which
I mean, it is one of the hottest games out there right now, but I didn't think it would take it so literally.
Oh my god, why?
not even
It's good to have you
5
back.
minutes in.
And we are already regretting our decision to let him out.
Then our other fun little news story is that so this is the financial thing. Surprisingly, we have a financial story. So last week there were rumors that an EA employee had been selling FIFA Ultimate Team players for real money. Now, the scandal there is that EA employees have discretionary content granting for FIFA because they're EA employees, which means they don't have to pay for a lot of this stuff. Obviously, we don't have the details of what that happened, but someone was selling players for some big bucks because they can be up to like $1,000 of real money in that game. Now, EA has completely halted all discretionary content granting after those
Does that
rumors.
Taking away content that people have, or just stopping it where it is?
I think just stopping it. I don't think they care enough to take away content. But
if you're gonna put your customers through loot boxes, put the employees through it too.
Look, I mean, my big thing
They
with
don't
this
discriminate.
is just like, why is a FIFA player $1,000? Like, what?
Yeah. If that sort of like in-game economy didn't exist because of loot boxes, then this problem would have never have existed.
Yeah, and like EA is just kind of complicit in this. Like, it's a thing they do. It's weird that it tends to be relegated to sports games in my mind. Like,
Sports are linked with gambling, just at a baseline. I
I'm
feel like
just
at this
curious
point.
what lets them get away with it. I would assume maybe it's because like a lot of people that play FIFA is like the only game they play because they're sports
Well,
fans. They're not really
Yeah.
big
do you
gamers.
know how corrupt FIFA actually is as an actual organization?
Oh yeah, the like soccer organization. Yeah,
Yes.
I am
My
aware.
God.
I mean, I've played a few FIFA games, and they are quite well made for what they are, aside from all the microtransactions and everything. But I don't know, they're pretty fun. It's just a little sad when you see this kind of thing, and you're like, come on, man, why you got to go selling things like that for $1,000? You know,
You've ruined it for everyone.
it's a weird situation. And with that, the news is done. The only other little thing is that Bethesda has officially been welcomed to Xbox. And we did get an announcement of this, that some, if not all, future Bethesda titles will be exclusive not to Xbox and PC, but specifically to platforms with Xbox Game Pass is the wording.
Ooh,
Interesting.
So
what?
to me, that means that Microsoft is like putting this on Sony. They're like, you either need to allow Game Pass on your platform, or you're not getting Bethesda games.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which
That
is
is
a
some-
power play.
Yeah, that is a power
Wow.
move.
So me worried about Elder Scrolls 6 at this point. Does that mean not PC?
No, PC will
No,
get
because
it.
PC has Game Pass.
Oh,
PC will get everything.
fuck.
It's
Oh.
it's whatever supports Game Pass.
Wow, you
But,
used our one allowance very early on, Alex.
Oh,
Fool! You've doomed the
Yeah.
rest of us.
Oh well.
but it's not going to be on Steam. It's just Game Pass then.
We don't know.
But
Microsoft
a lot
has
of
been
games-
putting games from Game Pass on Steam.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like you can buy Gears 5 on Steam right now if you want
Oh.
to. You can get the Master Chief Collection on Steam if you want to. They really don't care about platform at this point.
It's great. I mean, it's a
It's
really
wonderful.
good, I think,
Yeah.
business decision for them, because they have so many revenue streams at this point of like people that don't want Game Pass and just want like Forza or Gears can just get that game on Steam, or they can get Game Pass on PC and get all the stuff. So lots of fun little Microsoft things. All right, that's it. We did the news. Yahoo. Moving on.
I don't much care for that search engine, but okay.
So our topic for this episode is non-traditional storytelling in games. And, you know, I really think the most non-traditional method of storytelling is when we try to do it, because we're all terrible. So
I mean, look, I take a little offense as a narrative designer. I take a little offense.
I was gonna
But,
say,
like-
looks at 30 planned chapters of graphic novel. Jeez, thanks.
looks
Don't
at the
look at me,
script
I'm
for
just a
this
character
episode.
artist.
Yo, wait, we have a script.
Yeah.
Don't break the fourth wall. Show's entirely scripted. All right. You guys know the drill. Get out of here. Don't listen to the episode later. I will pull you each in one by one. There will be one complication this time, and that is I will give each of you one more detail that you have to work into your middle part of this character's arc.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
Fancy.
Interesting.
Get out of here, all of you. But not you, Alex, because you're first.
Oh, sorry. I thought I accidentally came back in.
Nope, I just
Oh,
pulled you back
first.
in. So,
Okay.
last we left off in the tale of Ibarella, you had described the haunted dungeon and the mini quests that you would be sent on for the dolls. But there was a complication. You see, this character that I am sending you an image of is involved in this this
Oh.
other character's story.
Oh.
This is Dr. Derrier. Now you must tell me how Dr. Derrier is involved with Ibarella's story.
I'd like to know how he
Character
got his doctorate. Oh, wow. Okay. I think Oh, is this a little thinking time before that, or is that just a stream of consciousness now?
You can go. You can go.
All right.
I will time you for like 70 seconds this time. Give you a little bit more
Alright.
time.
Oh boy. Okay, looks like he's definitely part of like a pastel steampunk cult.
Oh, I can add. Daria is
Um,
female.
Oh,
The angle
oh, I could,
makes it hard. You can't really see the shape
okay.
of the body.
Okay. She is part of a pastel steampunk cult. That is a series of words. Um. I think you know what? I'm thinking after all the dolls have been released from their demonic bonds, um, Ibarella's going to want to go on maybe some sort of a shopping trip, and this character has a doctorate in fashion. Uh, there's going to be probably some material gathering for a very special outfit that's going to be cool, and maybe gives people bonuses to fighting abilities and things like that you can get after you complete this part of her quest.
Okay. What else?
Yeah,
What's the lead up to the conclusion?
doctorate in fashion. Ooh, I think it might involve said doctor as well. Maybe there is introduction to maybe a clothing workshop. That's a dungeon that you need to clear out, something like that with evil clothing.
Okay. I see. All
These
right.
boots were made for stomping all over you.
So that's your time. You're going to clear the evil clothing dungeon, and then next week, or the week after, depending on how time works out, we will get back to finishing the tale of Ibarella and Dr. Derrier now. Alex, you may return to the other channel, and I will pull in someone else.
I cannot wait.
All right, Brett. Are you ready to continue telling us the tale of Johnny's spiral?
As ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
All right. So I'm adding a complication to each of these tales. I'm going to tell you one more detail that you got to work in, and this is an actual detail from the game.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny is absolutely obsessed with Tifa.
Okay.
Absolutely obsessed.
Okay.
All right, you have 70 seconds to continue this arc. Give me the midpoint lead up to the conclusion.
So, this is like way further in the game, right? You dropped him off at his apartment last time, and he's like he's gone or whatever. Maybe you forgot about him, but then he shows up again. And his entire hand is a drill now because of the spiral that was on his thumb. And he immediately runs up to Tifa and starts like talking to her, trying to like, whoa, yeah, my drill's pretty huge, right? Pretty impressive.
Could say it would pierce the heavens.
And exactly. And Cloud goes, what the heck are you talking about? And he just goes, man, I just you ever watch Gurren Lagann? I really like that show. Because they did a Attack on Top of Gurren Lagann tie-in. And Cloud with about the same cadence as the line he says when Tifa or Aerith like compliments him on his dress wearing beauty. He just says, "I hate Gurren Lagann," and then that actually triggers a fight with Johnny, where you have to fight him and his drill hand.
All right, you got to prove yourself better than Johnny.
Yeah.
All right. Good. That is your time, Brett.
That's
you may
it.
return, and I will pull Wyatt in here.
Well,
Wyatt, I hope you're ready to continue the tale of Mithril Mike. So at this point in your story, you would set up that he would be joining the group of companions.
Yeah, that's correct. Now it is interesting. I have been playing 7 Remake on the side, so I have like not context to this character, but slightly more context to the world and the central story, which is interesting. Which I'm going to try and not incorporate because that would kind of, ruin the whole thing. But I'll see what I can do.
All right. Now I'm going to give you one complication that you have to work into whatever you're doing, and this is a detail from his actual story.
Okay.
Mithril Mike must go to a cavern to do something.
Go to a cavern.
All right. You have 70 seconds to continue the story and get to the end of Arc 2 of this character's side story.
All right. So we we'll pick up right as he joins the group as they're going off and searching for something or other that I can't remember. And during their travels, the bridge from one town to another has been completely just demolished, and so they have to go through a cave. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And as they're in the cave, they're fighting all sorts of baddies, but they realize that this isn't just any regular cave. This is a whole laboratory where they exclusively develop and manufacture giant, hilarious metal chins, just like the one on our main character here. And so it was he that actually blew up the bridge and sidetracked the entire team just so that they would go through the cave, that they had no other choice. Because this is where he will get his revenge on the
His
man
revenge.
on the man that created them. But upon figuring out that he blew up the bridge, the entire team is just torn apart. And the man that he's come here to
10
fight
seconds.
has unfortunately escaped. And now the team is in ruins because they don't trust each other, because Mithril Mike is kind of an asshole. So
All right.
there you go.
So that is part 2 of Mithril Mike's chin story. Let's get everyone else back in here. All right, we have finished our storytelling act 2, which I think all around is far more nonsensical than the first.
Oh, definitely.
I can't wait to see how far off we all are.
It's going to be amazing. All right. With that, let's get into our primary topic for the episode, which is non-traditional storytelling in games. So, the way this is going to work, it's similar to when we did our level design discussion. We'll all kind of pick games we want to talk about. Though this time, I'm going to try to keep it limited to a smaller section of games, so we have a little bit more time to talk about each one. So this is a bit of a bigger topic. But go ahead. Why don't, Alex, I know you had some burning things you mentioned to start. Why don't you start us off, because you're at the top of the Discord list, and that makes it really easy for me to remember who goes next.
I have several. Should I just start out with one and we'll be rotating?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. First one on my list is a little bit closer to I guess the film version of non-traditional. So it's not too far out there, but Uncharted 2's usage of in media res, really.
Those are my favorite words.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, with the cold open. In other words, with oh no, I didn't mean to pun.
Oh
yes.
Look at this. We've already derailed.
Wow.
I'm training myself to not do more puns. I'm sorry.
Continue, Alex.
This is fantastic. But yeah, this can do it in film, so it's not too far from untraditional. It's just a mix up of the order of events, so you get a big feeling of suspense or mystery as to how something happened. In this example, we find our titular hero Nathan Drake hanging off of a train, hanging off of the side of an icy cliff. And then right after that, we're put into one of the worst stealth missions in gaming.
That's the real media is.
But wow, that cold open still sticks with me with a great great storytelling moment, and why Uncharted 2 is up there in my favorite games list.
It's definitely like one of the few examples of a story that I've seen that's done it correctly. Because I was watching a movie just last night that used that, and it was completely pointless. There was no need for it there. It literally just felt like it was there because it wanted to like make sure the movie hit an hour and a half.
Was
and
it
that's
pointless in the way that like it didn't add to suspense or mystery of
it added nothing
it
added nothing to like the story whatsoever.
This was the Sonic movie, yes?
Yes, it was. Now
That's
maybe I missed
detail to
something
add there.
Now maybe I was missing something because I was possibly maybe mildly to majorly intoxicated, right? But it was just I completely forgot that it was a thing by the time that they had like gotten back up to that point and mentioned it in like this weird kind of cringy Deadpool moment where they just like pointed it out. and it wasn't funny. It didn't add anything, and so yeah,
Only
it's just
Deadpool
nice
can do
to.
that.
Well, it's nice to see like a story actually use it correctly, because it kind of plays with your expectations of when that moment's going to come, which is cool. So
All
Yeah,
right.
that's my first Uncharted 2 mention.
Yeah, and what we'll kind of go by here is less necessarily games in specific and more like what they're doing,
Okay.
because we don't need to like focus in hyper specifically on the games, especially because we're trying not to spoil things. But yeah, I think another game that does a similar thing, not quite the same because it's not a different period in time, but opening on an event that you don't really have context for, is Final Fantasy 12. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that play Final Fantasy 12 probably played through that beginning portion and had like a big amount of surprise at the end of it, because it opens on a character that you don't really see again after that, but you learn why that event is super important in the narrative of the game far later. And then you kind of connect all the dots, and it's just a very fun, like, bit of, oh, that's why that was there, and like why that mattered. It's always just a lot of fun to have those kind of things. I can't think of many games that have done the Uncharted 2 style opening, though.
Uncharted 4.
Well,
did
I
a
mean,
very
aside
similar
from Uncharted.
Oh yeah, they did that in 4 too.
I would say to a lesser extent in terms of quality, but yeah. No, I think, at least in my mind, it's like that's the one example where I haven't really seen a game or a movie or something that's done it better, in my opinion. Maybe controversial, but I don't know. They just utilized it really well.
Memento, technically.
Oh man, I haven't seen Memento in such a long time. I can
Yeah,
I can
I'd say
barely remember
Memento
it.
probably is a little bit better, but it's also like that's the entire point of that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, Brett,
Hello.
you got a non-traditional storytelling method or a game that has spoken to you
Yes,
very
yes, I
closely.
do. This is, as we all know, it is a many things podcast, but it is also a Halo podcast. So I will do my due diligence and start talking about the one Halo game that tried to do things really differently in terms of storytelling, and that is ODST. And it is my favorite one because of this. But like it's not really much of a spoiler, but it's just how the game works. Is you go around this abandoned, futuristic New Mombasa city as the quote unquote main character. And there's like things to shoot and Halo games to play, but you're more of like a detective, and you find little like items around the city, and then your character picks them up, and then I guess like thinks about them for a sec, and then you go back in time to the 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 time where like those objects got there. So like in one of the missions, you find like a destroyed helmet in like crashed into a TV through a window at the top of a skyscraper, and then you find it, and then you go back. You play the mission where that helmet like ends up there, and through the city security cameras, you see it like fly through the window and crash in and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. And that back and forth um, is something that's really hard to do in terms of like being consistent and not confusing people with like head hopping between a bunch of different characters. But ODST does it so well. That is such a good campaign.
Yeah, that's a technique I tend to see a lot more in like books than games, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am, yeah, ODST is one of my favorite Halo games too. I've been meaning to go replay it, but man, it is really, really well done.
The best way to describe it is like, think of a collection of short stories with the rookies like open it world sections being like the framing device for them.
Yeah.
Is like a good way to think about it. Because if you go into it thinking of it like a central like linear narrative like the other Halo games, it's going to be a little weird if you're kind of going with that expectation. But I would say the only issue I have with it is it gives you the opportunity sometimes to play certain levels like out of sequence. So sometimes you'll see like a character here, and then that might give away, it's like, oh, I saw a character here, so I know that this character at this point in the story isn't going to die because I saw them in a later sequence, which is a little bit disappointing. But I mean, 9 times out of 10, you always do it in order anyways when you're just playing it for the first time and you don't really know what's going on.
It's I was gonna say I don't think I've ever like done it out of order before.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that it can happen. I don't think there's a ton that you could have done to avoid it, especially because they didn't actually have that much time to develop ODST. But yeah,
Yeah,
If
I'm trying to
anything,
think
it's
of
pretty
other
cool that
games that have used that specific type of like finding an object related to a character and then going back and playing through a section. I think the closest I can think of is Jedi Fallen Order's like object memories, but even then, that's not really that
they don't open
similar.
up to a playable
Exactly,
sequence
like,
at all. Yeah,
and I'm sure that I'm 100% positive I've played a game before that did a very similar thing, and I've just forgotten about it, which is a shame. 'Cause I 100% remember like looking at an object and then going into it's Disgaea 5. Disgaea 5. So hold with me here. Hold with me here while I describe
life comes at you
this
fast,
insanity.
Ryan.
I'm holding on.
I'm so glad I remembered this. So ODST obviously does it more directly narratively. Disgaea 5 has this wonderful little system called item dungeons, where every item in the game, down to like the most basic consumable, has an entire set of dungeons inside of it, should you want to go inside them to do some weird stuff to that item. And you
Items
can like
have dungeons in them.
Yep, and it's like themed as you are rewriting the consciousness of the item to be better.
Oh,
No.
What?
It is bonkers.
This-
But
this
yeah,
guy
it's
is
a really,
insanity.
really helpful, or not helpful, but a very interesting thing, because like your characters have things to say about it. It's contextualized in the world as being a thing that happens, that just objects have worlds inside of them, which is a lot of fun.
That's
it's
pretty
really cool.
Yeah, I wish I knew more games that did that. All right. If that's all we have to say about ODST, then I got something for us. Some spicy takes.
Do it. Do it.
So far, we've been talking mostly about plot. I want to talk about game mechanics and how they make the stories non-traditional. And we've talked a lot about the Nemesis system before, so I'm not going to use the Nemesis system for this example, but the Nemesis system is like the primary thing you think of when you think of like emergent character stories, of like having characters that are completely randomly generated, that you kind of grow relationships with over time. But what I want to do, I want to talk about Crusader Kings as a whole. Primarily 3, but this applies to all the Crusader Kings games. So for those who don't know, Crusader Kings is a grand strategy series where you play a line of royal people and try to essentially either conquer the world or do whatever you want, really. It's a sandbox game. But all the characters are like affected by traits and have, similarly to the Nemesis system, a lot of like effects based on their background, based on their childhood, based on like birth defects, the relationship of their parents. So you can have like a child, right? That will be your next in line. And of course, because this is like a feudal game, you have to deal with rights of like who will get land when you die. And because you're playing through a lineage and not just one character, you have to think about that well in advance. And you only have like 50 to 60 years of playing as that character before you need to figure out what's going to happen when your kingdom fractures when you die. So what you can do is do things like set your child up to go to a school, and be taught by like either a priest of whatever religion is there, if you want them to be very priestly and be able to like essentially tax everyone very heavily through tithes.
How priestly of you.
How priestly.
How fable of you.
Of course, you could also make your own religion that's like a giant cult of cannibals, but that's entirely up to you.
Oh my god.
But my favorite thing to do is you put them under your spy master so they can learn intrigue. And then what you manage to do is, when that child has been raised up, the next generation, when they inevitably become king and you have siblings you got to deal with, because they're taught an intrigue, they now know how to murder all of their children, all of their siblings. So they can then recollect the entire kingdom. And then you realize that that's kind of how history worked.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's startlingly realistic.
Which is fun because all these characters are based off of like real historical people, until of course they have children with random people. But your baseline is basically like the lords and nobles that existed in the region, European regions in history. So like you can start as King Harold and then
Can't
try
wait to
to
inbreed Henry VIII.
exactly. But it's a lot of fun going through that game and like seeing what happens because there's all sorts of like events that will pop up where it's like you find a dog in the wilderness. Are you going to name it and take it home with you? And then your dog can eventually either like run away or become your faithful companion and then eventually like pass away. And your character gets like a debuff when the dog passes away. That's like lost a companion.
And then I get a debuff too because I lost a companion.
But you see, if you're playing the game and you have the dog, you get a buff that's like every couple of years you might go do a cool thing with your dog and be better at something or be more charming
that's
because your
nice.
dog is with you.
So
That's nice.
realistic.
It's amazing. It's super intricate and it tracks all of these relationships in the menu, so you can kind of like see what all of the characters think of each other. And there's all sorts of cool ways to manipulate it, and I just think it's like probably the most advanced character system that exists right now. And there's a lot of narrative to it because of all the events and whatnot. But the fun part is that this is legitimately something that only games can do. Like there is no other medium that would be able to accomplish that specific thing. So I just think it's super interesting, and it's on Game Pass. Crusader Kings 3 is on Game Pass to play for anyone who has it. So absolutely recommend it. All right.
Sounds like it was designed in a mental hospital.
The people at Paradox are complete madmen.
Like,
Yeah, well,
oh
what's
my
this?
God.
What's this business about the dog? That's not escapism. That's what actually happens in real life.
Yup. And of course, you can have a cat, but if you get a cat and a dog, they might accidentally kill each other. So
No.
So, yep, there are a lot of decisions that you get to make over the course of that game, and many of them are not so great. But sometimes you get to murder your evil cousin who stole your land from you. So, in the end, it's all worth it.
So just like in real life.
Just like in real life. Hey, Wyatt.
What's up?
Hey, I can sense that you've got a topic for us to talk about.
I do. I got a bit of a weird one for you. It's a little out there. It's a little spicy. Does anyone remember the TV show Defiance?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah. I remember
I
that.
played
I remember the
Defiance.
Nirvana
No,
song. Oh my
that was my
God.
next question. Has anyone played the MMO
Yep.
Defiance?
Yup.
I did for a little bit.
I played a
was
lot of
actually-
Defiance.
It's actually kind of cool. Anyway, here's so for those of you listening who don't know, Defiance was a sci-fi TV show that came out, 2013, 2014?
I
Something
want to
like
say
that.
2014. I
Yeah.
feel like that's right.
And there was also a companion MMO of the same name that came out around the same time. And they actually had this really interesting cross-media sort of storytelling plan where what players did in the MMO and certain missions that they would do would affect the TV show. And if their if their player became it's like high enough level or a certain kind of like something or other. I don't 100% remember how it works, but basically, if you were an active enough player in the community, your character from the MMO would actually show up in the TV show, and then the events of the TV show would then affect the events in the game. It's really interesting, and it's so sad that the show never got off the ground. I know that the MMO is actually still has a pretty solid community
Because
to
it's
this
only
day, and
it's
that's
one of the
been-
only like shooter MMOs out there.
It's super interesting. But yeah, the game is still going, but the TV show isn't, unfortunately. And it's so sad to see because I think it's such an interesting idea. Super ambitious as well, and just something that we don't see
absolutely.
anymore. And I actually originally thought when Quantum Break was coming out that they were doing a similar thing where they had a TV show segment and they also had a video game segment of the same story, but it was just a TV show that were basically just cutscenes for
Yeah,
the
it was
games.
cutscenes.
So to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why they even did a TV show.
It was probably cheaper.
Yeah, you know what? That makes sense.
Surprisingly, I would bet.
But yeah, just having two different ongoing sort of media entities that were affecting each other narratively is such an interesting idea. And because of how prevalent, like really quality TV is now, I would love to see. I would love to see this done again because I think, especially because everyone's at home right now and they're utilizing streaming services, and because just streaming services in general are a lot more prevalent now. I would love to see that done again. Obviously, it's super expensive to do and it's very like complicated, but I would love to see another attempt at it.
I'm like legitimately kind of surprised that Disney hasn't attempted something. Seeing as they own so many like game and movie properties, like a Star Wars one, I think would instantly have a player base, and like the TV show would do well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Mandalorian-esque Star Wars game with the TV tie-in?
Oh man.
Don't say the numbers. Don't say the two names.
Don't say
the two numbers.
The cursed
you mean
phrase.
But no, I think it's really cool, and cross-media storytelling is something that I'm super interested in, but it's obviously something that's like super difficult to do. But
absolutely,
yeah.
I mean, I think the closest we've gotten to succeeding is the Halo books and Warhammer books.
All 40 or so of them.
Yep.
And I mean, Star Wars is like kind of doing it. it's just because it's a property that has eggs in a lot of different baskets.
Yeah, nothing's really changing because of either of the other ends.
It's all just canon. But you know, if they wanted to, they could do something like that.
But guys, don't you remember when Disney said that all the multiplayer battles in Battlefront 2 were canon? Don't you remember that?
Wait, that's a thing? They said that?
Yes, they did.
Let's just
they did, like,
forget that they said that.
That was hilarious. They definitely just like silently took it back because it is the
100%.
thing that someone could say.
I could see them saying that for like what's it called? Assault or Galactic Assault or whatever it's called.
For like each map is a battle that was canonically fought, but not each battle.
Yeah, but they said every single like multiplayer game.
Then yeah, no, that's
classic.
All right.
Anyway.
Star Wars, get off your high horse. Hey, Alex.
Get off your high tauntaun.
No.
Oh, God.
Yes, Ryan.
You got something else for us?
I do. The most reliably unreliable of narrators. Oh yeah, we said we weren't going to mention games.
No, we can mention games. I just don't. Well, I want to leave time that we can talk about other games that do similar things.
Yeah.
Basically.
The way that narration is handled in the Stanley Parable.
Absolutely.
That is with the narrator just being so reactive to your choices and actions and lack thereof as well.
Well, also the narrator having like their own motivations and not
Yeah.
necessarily being impartial. Like very few other games have done that. I think Hades gets a little bit close at times. So does Bastion. Supergiant likes that kind of thing.
You also have games that do the reverse sort of situation where what you're doing is directly as a result of what the narrator says. Right?
Oh yeah.
So a good example.
Would you kindly?
Well, there's that, but I'm thinking more of something like if anyone's played Call of War as Gunslinger, because you have the main character who's narrating your journey, but sometimes because he's telling the story to some to some people at a tavern, he like puts in a few more enemies here or there, or someone corrects him on something, so the level design changes right in front of you, stuff like that. It's super interesting. They did it a little bit too with They did it a little bit too with Immortals. I wish they had gone further with it, because every time they did it, which was like 2 or 3 times in the story content, it was actually really cool. But I wish they had gone a little bit further with it. But it's always cool to see like the narrator kind of almost acknowledging that you're playing a game, and so it just kind of like changes the level design and kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit.
Yeah, I think Stanley Parable especially is super interesting because of the way that like the game minor. I don't know if you would consider these spoilers or not, but it doesn't really have a proper like correct ending.
There's so many.
There's just
of
a
them.
lot of different like routes you can take, and they're all very unique. And topical because Stanley Parable's like deluxe edition is coming out soonish in the next couple months.
Wow, look at that! Totally planned.
Yeah, they're coming out with an updated one with a few new story things, which is fun.
More story.
Yeah, more Stanley Parable. I mean,
don't know
that's
if I can
just a
handle
good
that.
thing.
That's a lot.
And yeah, weirdly enough, coincidentally, Alex, I think you might have seen this yesterday when I was streaming 14, but Final Fantasy 14 started doing that. The portion of the game I'm at is narrated by a character that you meet, who you don't really know the motivations of, but they're like narrating your journey through the different zones, like fully voice acted and everything. It's very interesting because I don't know where they're going with it yet, but it's exciting to see.
Was that when you were with the dragon?
Yep, that was
A dragon?
the dragon area. There were many dragons. Yeah, it's a cool little thing. Just like unreliable narrators in general are very fun to play with games because there's a lot you can do of having like Stanley Parable where like things will change depending on where you go based on what the narrator said. The new Antechamber did the same thing. It's a lot of fun.
Chamber.
Is that all, Alex, or anything else to add to that?
Yeah, Unreliable Narrators was my next big one that I wanted to talk about.
All right. Hey, Brett.
Hello.
You ready?
As ready as I'll ever be. Well, because I've been kind of thinking of these, not super exactly, but more along the lines of things that games can do, but like movies and stuff can't. At least, like, not without stretching what can possibly be done with a movie. But different endings is something that is pretty. It is a lot more common in games than in other media that aren't like choose your own adventure books, like those Goosebumps books that you'd be able to like look at the number on the bottom of the page and be like, go here if you want to do this, or go to this page if you want to do that.
I mean, those are basically games anyway, so
It's in their own way.
I miss those.
But like to the point where like the only reason that Nier exists at all is because it's like ending
I was gonna bring that up.
of the Draken Guard. Like
I was gonna bring up Nier Automata actually.
And like even the Nier games themselves have like endings going down to like halfway through the alphabet. With like a bunch of different requirements and stuff to do.
Actually, they cover the full alphabet.
Oh, really?
No.
I
Yeah,
actually didn't know that.
The only ones that are important are the first like 5 letters, but
yeah,
after that there's like goofy ones of if you eat the wrong thing, your character just dies.
Of course.
And you get like ending F for
uninstall your OS.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's great. But yeah, that's like it's kind of almost become like a commonplace thing with a lot of kinds of games now that just let you have a certain amount of interaction, and with different kinds of interaction in different situations, it's like, okay, well, every single person isn't going to do the same thing, so maybe we should make a different thing happen. And then if you do that enough, then you realize, oh, well, maybe we should have a different ending. And you can't really do that with like a movie or something, because then what you're gonna make people buy
the Snyder Cut,
another ticket. You're gonna make people buy the Snyder Cut.
Like even with that stuff, I think
it is far more affecting.
The closest that movies and games have come to becoming one thing as far as their interaction goes, I think are things like Detroit Become Human and Heavy Rain and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, those games can tell a story in a way that movies can't, by having like your actions affect the outcome in very meaningful ways.
Yeah. But they are presented visually very much like movies because you're not in full control of your character. Definitely.
Yeah, and I do want to point out something interesting with Nier specifically, in that it's one of the few games where like there are multiple endings, but there are multiple endings that are all not quite sequential, but important to the true narrative of the story. Like, to get the full effect, you're supposed to play through like endings A through E.
Yeah.
Because they all are very important and kind of form the full picture of what was going on. Yeah, which is crazy cool, because Nier Automata, for many people that don't know and haven't played Nier Automata ends and then has the sequel to the game built into it. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
straight up with like a not even a title drop, but a like cutscene trailer for the second half.
It's a wacky game, to put it simply.
Yeah, Taro is a madman.
Yep.
You can can't you fight one of the game devs as a boss?
Yes, that was in the DLC though. It's not
Ah,
part of the main game.
As you do in most video games.
Yeah,
Of course.
that's in a lot of games. I know Yakuza's done it before. I feel like GTA did it at one point. I know Saints Row did it. Yeah, lots of
you
lots of games
rescue
have done that.
Kojima in Metal Gear, I think.
Oh yeah, you do. Completely forgot about that.
What took you so long? It's like, well, you know what, buddy?
All right. Anything else along with that, Brett, that you want to talk about?
No, not really, because there are so many games that have like different endings and stuff. We could do a whole episode about that, but it would be very spoilery.
Oh, absolutely.
So should probably stop talking about it there before
Discuss
we start
every
spoiling
alternate
things.
ending of every game we've played, and then some.
Oh,
Dude, that
God.
would be a 10-year long podcast. All right. So my next bit, actually, I'm swapping it around because Brett, this ties in well with what you were just talking about. Is games that have that multiple playthrough, the replayability are like designed into the game for you to get like extra stuff out of it. I think the best examples of this are like Zero Escape, Isomnium Files, Nier, obviously, but games that have more than one playthrough that you can do in different orders, but to unlock like a quote unquote true ending. I'm hesitant to use that term because it doesn't fit a lot of the scenarios, but it gets the idea across of like to get the full story of the game. It's playing with the idea of like the player as an entity that is doing multiple playthroughs. And I think my favorite example of this is Bravely Default. I'm not going to spoil what specifically happens for those who haven't played it, but Bravely Default makes a very interesting decision partway through where you replay significant portions of the game slightly differently, and that also caused a lot of people to quit the game because you are just replaying a large portion of the game like 4 times. And if you aren't okay with that, you may not have the stamina to finish the game, especially on 3DS where you have to play it on the small screen. But if you do get through, there's some very interesting payoff to the repeated cycle that you're going through, and like the whole idea that the characters themselves are like questioning why you're doing it. And kind of like the idea of the player just being almost an entity in their own right, of when they're going through the story, it matters what order you do things in and all that. I think it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting to see that in many games. Oh, has no one else played a game like that?
I'm trying to think. That's the thing. A lot of this silence is me trying to be like, what games have I played?
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
didn't make a list for this, and I'm regretting it.
I have patience for a lot of things in games. I don't think I've run into one where that's one of them, though. So I don't really think I have much experience with that.
Yeah, Alex, you need to play Isomnium Files, 100%.
Yes. Yeah.
That should be up there on your list.
I think I've only played one of the No Nary games on my DS once through. I didn't know there were, or maybe
there's
I've just
3
forgotten
of
that
them,
there were
I
multiple
think.
things.
I believe there are 3 of them. I should know because I've played them. You know, sometimes those Japanese games all blend together.
I think.
I can't believe you said that and not
Yeah,
me.
really. I think the best example that I can come up with for things that I've played is the Dark Souls games have a pretty like they're pretty long, and also because isn't like Bravely Default pretty difficult as far as JRPGs go. Like Dark Souls is definitely
Yeah.
up there too, obviously because of haha the joke. But like
You do
if
go through, you do backtrack a lot.
you backtrack a lot, but like you can finish the game, and then there's like built-in new game plus levels up to like new game plus 10, and they each have like more and more enemies being added and stuff. And each time, like if you didn't know how to save this random NPC the first time, well, you can learn their story for the next time and then do it so that you can get the special item that they get instead of just ignoring them because they pushed you into a hole and made fun of you, and while being that they're the bald ones, so maybe they shouldn't be making fun of you. Very angry at Patches. Um, but yeah, that's the only kind of similar example I can think of.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that anyone who hasn't played either oh, and I absolutely forgot the biggest example of this, 13 Sentinels. That is literally what 13 Sentinels is about.
But that's like still one playthrough though. That's not going back through a different playthrough, is it?
Well, the way I would put it is it's playing through. I would consider each character like their own playthrough, essentially.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily mean like a playing through the same thing again, but having multiple complete stories that you finish to get like the whole picture. So yeah, I think that's a super interesting aspect of something games can do that really isn't doable in other media. I mean, Memento is probably the closest to that film will likely get. But yeah, that's my take on it. So Wyatt.
Yeah, hi.
You got something sitting in the wings, ready?
What it do?
I do. It's within the same ballpark of what Ryan and Brett have been talking about, but it's a little bit more broad in the sense that I love how video games can play with context in a way that movies and books, for example, can't. So, perfect example. Witcher 3, there's a side quest. This isn't a main story quest, by the way. This is a side quest where, because you're a monster hunter, people are like, hey, there's this werewolf at this monastery type place. Can you go and kill him? And you're like, okay, cool. You can just walk in there and then kill the werewolf in there and then just skedaddle and collect your crowns and get out of there. But if you really spend the time to talk to people, and it's completely unprompted, but if you spend the time to talk to people, search the environment and stuff, the entire quest changes. Like the goal of your quest completely changes as you learn more about what happened here, how this creature got here, and everything surrounding it. And I don't want to give it away. I'm going to keep it spoiler free, but if you really spend the time to kind of look around, the story of that side quest becomes much different. It becomes a completely different kind of quest at the end of it, depending on how much you take the time to look around. It was one of the coolest moments I've ever had while playing a game, because I literally spent 4 or 5 hours just running around and like collecting information and like trying to build a picture of what this entire situation is in reality and not just the simple kind of version that you're given. And there isn't a specific name for it, but it's just how video games can mess with context that I think is really interesting.
Surprise environmental details.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And obviously, like a lot of games, or specifically RPGs, that has like multiple endings, will deal with it. But I've never seen a game that dives in as deep as it does, because it's so unprompted. It's like, there's a little bit where you read up about, some people here, some people there, and then you realize that there's like a group of people that you ran by earlier that you had no idea was actually part of this quest. So you like run down and then you talk to them for a bit and you run back. It was so cool how it used the entire space, and it took so much time to create, to kind of slowly piece together what's actually going on. And again, totally unprompted. You could just go in there and kill the thing and then call it a day if you were a little bit more impatient.
Yeah.
So.
It's really cool when games do that. I'm playing through the original FF7 now because Wyatt is playing through Remake, so I figured it'd be a fun little side by side to do. And surprisingly, the original FF7 has an instance like this that's a lot more minor. It's not quite as like life or death as that kind of situation, but it's still a cool little side quest where, depending on how you do things, you may get certain items, you may not. You might talk to characters and not really learn what's going on with them. It's basically just like learning more details. You won't fail like the main missions or anything, but you'll miss out on context for some actions that happen, and some characters that are like being set up for either later on or just as characters that live in that world and like contextualize. Wow, I said contextualize very weird there. But contextualize.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Things that are going on in the world. But yeah, I love games that do that.
Yeah, and even you don't have to. We've been using RPGs as an example, but another good example. Again, I'm not going to give anything away. Is the original Last of Us actually does this
I was just
really,
about to
really
say that.
well. It's super, super subtle. And again, if you're not paying attention and you're not spending more time in the environment, you wouldn't notice it. And even if you do, it's something that's really, really subtle, but it has the ability to completely change the way you feel about the ending. The hotly debated ending that many people have different interpretations about. But I think if you play through the game and you kind of pay attention more to the sort of collectibles and journal entries that you pick up, I think a lot of people are going to view that ending very differently.
All right. Hey, Alex.
Yes.
It's your moment, your spot in the light.
Okay. Oh, it's bright. It's blinding.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I turned
being
the
drawn
floodlights
towards it.
on.
This is
Okay.
go.
You
so-
gotta say something at some point, Alex.
The exact opposite of what I was talking about before with the narrators. Absolutely no introductory story at all. Not even being dropped into in media res in something, just being plopped into a game world almost, with no justification for actions or motivation while you're in there. And this is I find this a lot more in older games because they may not have had the means to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of any recent games that do this as much as I've seen them done it before, but my big example for this is Myst.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get some inklings of story here and there, and it all eventually builds up, and then you get the full motion video cutscenes. But there's I have to be in a certain mood to enjoy just being dropped into a game world to see it, and to just do whatever, not even in a sandbox type of sense, but it sometimes it can work and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I would the one big example of this kind of thing, I think, is Pathologic and Pathologic 2.
Oh boy.
Of where a game utilizes that specific feeling to enhance like the experience of playing the game. Pathologic 1 kind of fails because it's super old and janky and generally just a frustration to play, which is part of the narrative, but at the same time, like if your game's frustrating enough that no one's going to finish it, then you might have an issue. Pathologic 2 is much, much better in that it's actually like got enjoyable systems and very engaging gameplay, but it kind of drops you in and it's like, hey, you're here, you got to figure out what's going on and fix it. Figure it out. And Breath of the Wild almost does the same thing, but you get a bit of explanation there.
But that's only after you play around for a bit. I mean, the explanation really comes when you're talking to a certain character that they kind of show you at the beginning, but you totally don't have to go talk to him for the longest time if you don't want to.
I know, but you're still locked to that little section of the game until you do.
That's true.
Whereas Pathologic, like you are dropped in there, you have free reign, go do whatever you want. But
now,
if you mess up, you might blow up the world. So
I haven't played this game, but it seems like Outer Wilds would do a similar thing where they just kind of drop you in without an explanation. Now, again, I haven't played it, but
to a degree, they don't tell you what's going on with the whole looping thing, but the game's marketing kind of spoils that. So
okay. But if you went into it completely blind, you hadn't seen any marketing or MIGs talk or anything like that, you wouldn't know. Is that correct?
Yeah, not for 20 minutes or so. So you'd have 20 minutes of that experience.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I really like the no story at first. You can choose to go out of your way and build it up and find things, or sometimes the story is almost completely hidden in Easter eggs.
I mean, that's part of why people love like
place.
Fallout New Vegas so much, is that you can kind of just ignore the main stuff and go learn more about the world and like just figure out what's going on in your own time, which is a lot of fun. Very uniquely video game.
I'm trying to think of like specifically NES games that just kind of drop you in, because back then there wasn't the kind of technology to really tell a story in the same way.
Most of them did. Zelda does. It just kind of drops you there.
Well, no, even Zelda has kind of like a beginning little like scroll, like a little text scroll of what's going on.
A lot of them have like either like that beginning scroll or like the story is
In the
like on
manual.
the back of the
On
box
the
or
box,
something.
yeah.
In the manual.
Well, perfect example, Castlevania. All they give you at the
Oh,
beginning of the
totally.
game
Oh.
is just you in front of the castle, and that's it. And then you're just on your way.
It's and that's like, it's not even, oh well, those games are so old, they do such better now. It's like legitimately, at the time, that's kind of the only motivation you need. You got the castle, it's full of stuff, go kill it, have fun.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah, and
wouldn't
it's
you
full
want to
of
go towards it?
recognizable movie monsters. You're
Yeah.
automatically going to want to kill them anyway.
Recognizable movie monsters like the Doulahan.
The flying Medusa head.
All right. Hey, Brett.
Hello.
It's that time of the episode where you gotta talk.
Oh, not again.
Your time has come.
Kind
Oh my
of
God.
along the same lines that we've been going down. I don't know what to call this in a terse little Professor Miggs term that I can say. I coined this term because it's not like environmental storytelling. It's kind of like it's beyond like secret surprise environmental storytelling. Like it's like I'm thinking of like Shadow of the Colossus or like Dark Souls, where like the game
Mm.
came out on, in Shadow of the Colossus case, the PS2, and people are still like analyzing it, and not like in the narrative that's their way, like specifically the narrative that is not their way, like going around this huge empty world and like trying to figure out like, oh, that's what this structure is for, is that's what used to be around these mountains, or like a colossus that wasn't in the finished game was going to be around here, and that's
Oh.
why the game doesn't point you to this area with the glowing sword arrow thing, but there's this huge arena here that's very intricately made and stuff, but there's no colossus here. So why is that? Then okay, out of what of the beta colossi, which one was going to be here? And like people have been doing that for the past 15 years that the game has been a thing, and it only gets like more intense with the remake that Bluepoint did,
Oh
because
yeah.
they knew that and they put even more detail in. Like it is
Ooh.
like it is
But they didn't put a
insane.
Colossus in the Colosseum?
No, they didn't add any extra colossi, but
Ah,
that
darn.
just because, Alex, just because they said they didn't doesn't mean that people will still look for it as if there is one, which is beautiful. Like you can't have that in any other. You can physically read between the lines as much as you want to find like extra meaning or whatever, but you can't like go inside like a movie screen or something and explore a world and fully analyze everything about the society that this world is a part of just from the ancient structures that they left behind. Like it is complete and utter crazy person talk, but it is so interesting to see people whose like entire internet like lifelines are just completely built up off of only analyzing something like Shadow of the Colossus, or only doing like super deep lore explanations of Dark Souls or something like that.
It's impressive work.
It legitimately, it is it's pretty scholarly. It feels like archaeology in a way, because it's not like the devs are going to be like
Ooh.
pointing you in a direction.
Well, there's
Like
also
obviously they're not.
there's a classic design thing that a lot of people, I think, that haven't been exposed to like design theory don't think about, is that oftentimes designers will intentionally make something without knowing the purpose of it, so that people will speculate and maybe give cool ideas that either could be used later, or that are just like
Ooh.
something you will always question, like, why is this here? What's the purpose?
You could argue the entire lore behind Five Nights at Freddy's was made in that way.
Yeah, you really could. You honestly, literally could. I hate that you're
Because-
right.
Because
Yeah.
in many ways, the fan base and the countless MatPat videos were the people that actually
Oh,
created
boy.
the lore behind that game.
Yeah, I think
What's
the
this
more
purple
powerful
guy
thing
I'm
is,
hearing
like,
about? Oh.
Dark Souls that was already mentioned. A lot of the Dark Souls lore that exists is not necessarily from the games directly, but from like people kind of taking pieces that may or may not have actually been intended to be related by the developers, but of course they might have put them there so that people could relate them if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And like,
Fan
I bet
wiki.
the answer is that FromSoft doesn't know what like the lore is behind a lot of this stuff, because it's more fun if they don't. It's more fun to see what people come up with, and encourage that kind of creativity.
What's going on with Elden Ring?
You are incredibly
Yeah,
muted,
you're getting very
Alex.
quiet.
Oh boy, what's going on with Elden Ring?
Oh, so we didn't talk about this yet. Elden Ring did not show, a trailer leaked that was like an internal development trailer and not a like public trailer, which is why people were like, it looks very janky because it's an internal development trailer. So yeah, we haven't really talked about that because there's not honestly a lot we can say, because it's like a weird angled video that's super hard to see.
Yeah.
Progress.
It's definitely the thing is though is that I don't know if there's going to be any argument here, but it definitely looks real.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It's to fake something like that would take like as much effort. You know, you might as well just make the rest of the game at that point if you're going to fake a trailer that looks like that.
Yeah, and I mean, thanks for talking about that, Brett, because that's not what I was going to talk about, but it is fun to always talk about like the weird marketing stories that kind of build up around games to kind of create an image of a game that maybe doesn't exist, or really tilt your perception of things. But that's a whole other can of worms. That's a podcast-worthy thing on its own, of talking about like the whole cyberpunk being marketed as the game that it isn't. No Man's Sky being marketed.
We already had the cyberpunk episode. We can talk about it again.
Look, we haven't done the cyberpunk episode yet. we still have planned to do that, but at this point, I think we want to see if patches work out first. So,
how many more months until that's supposed to happen?
It's happening now. It got delayed because of the data breach, but it's happening. All right, so yeah. My next topic, I think, is something that every type of media plays with, but games can play with it in a very unique way, and that is morality, and like questioning decision making and whether or not things are inherently good or evil. That kind of question is just super nuanced in video games, and a lot of games kind of ignore it. Like your Call of Duties, your most JRPGs, most RPGs in general, actually, like, you would think they're the genre that is primed to tackle that question, but very often they undercut their message with the fact that you're murdering thousands of creatures all the time. So I actually want to talk about like very specific like games that can really play with that. I've mentioned Pathologic before, but it is a game that plays with that, where you're presented at certain points of like, the game's not making you ask this question, but a character tells you if you go kill another character, they'll give you food. If you don't get food, you will die. If you die, you can't do your job as a surgeon and heal the town. So is it then the morally correct choice for you to go murder a child to get food? Or is that still inherently worse than essentially letting the entire town die because you're the only person that can save it, because you would die? So that kind of question making in the decision making process, where there isn't necessarily a correct answer, I think is something that you can really only explore in that way with games.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's super rare to see a game that takes advantage of that. But the ones that do are really, really unique. Like Ghost of Tsushima tries, and then has the issue of it has the same RPG issue if you've murdered 1,000 people by that point. But yeah, it's always fun to see attempts at it.
And
I feel like you.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I feel like you've described something from Vampire. Or Vampire.
Vampire. Yeah, Vampire is a very interesting Don't Nod game from the Life is Strange devs, where anyone in the game, your character is a vampire, and you obviously would use blood to like get more powerful, but you have to choose like, who are you going to drink the blood of.
Yeah, your character's also a surgeon or something, aren't they? And they've taken a Hippocratic oath.
He's a doctor who's taken the Hippocratic oath, and has to deal with the fact that, first of all, somehow he did become a vampire against his will, so he doesn't want to drink blood or anything. But it is constantly playing with that process of, is it moral for you to make that decision? And then it runs into the same issue again of you're murdering a lot of people in that game with your machete. So I think most of them are like evil monsters, so it's really not that morally challenging, but still it is an interesting quandary of like, yeah, you need to drink blood from someone, but who are you gonna do it? Is it gonna be the friendly like nurse? Is it gonna be the dude who owns the shop? And what kind of repercussions is that gonna have?
And I think you can make a super interesting kind of like morality conflict when you tie the outcome of the story directly in with gameplay and directly what you're doing. So an example that comes to my mind is Dishonored, and how you can just kill everything in your path in order to get to the end, but you killing those people will actually, change the ending. And it's not just like, oh, you come up to a story moment and you have to pick between two things in the moment. It's something that's constantly being judged as you're playing.
You kill a single person in there, you get the bad ending.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Metro Last Light and Exodus, is that the ending is kind of dependent upon like, do you just run in, do you kill everyone, or do you kind of, take them out silently and just kind of knock them out rather than just outright kill them.
Yeah, I think the stuff I want to specifically give props to are the games that do it without the structured narrative.
Mhm.
Of like making the moral question something that the only person who can answer that question is yourself.
Mhm.
And the game itself is not making a judgment on what you're doing. Like that's part of why that Pathologic example I think is so good, because there is no point in the game where the characters will judge you for making that choice. The only judgment you have to give is your own, like, as a player, are you capable of doing that, even in like a digital setting where there aren't necessarily consequences. I think that's a far more powerful method of philosophizing in games.
Definitely.
And it's super rare to see.
I'd like to be able to explore that more when I get some good games that can do that. But at the same time, I don't like hurting the feelings of code.
Well, see, that's part of it.
I end up doing Paragon stuff all the time.
But you see,
things in that vein.
You haven't been pushed to the point where you would need to yet. Like that's the key, is that the game needs to be challenging, or not necessarily challenging, but like built in a way that will subtly encourage you to make those kinds of choices, but not overtly. Like that's Vampire's problem, is it's very overt in the fact that if you don't drink blood, you're just blanket weaker. But at the same time, if you're good at the game, there's really no point to drinking blood because all you do is dodge everything.
I think The Witcher, if I'm understanding you right, I think The Witcher has some quest lines that get sort of close to that line of decision making.
Yeah, the Witcher has one big example of what I'm talking about, which is your ending can vary based on your interactions with a specific character.
Right.
And you have no clue that it will vary until the end, which is the kind of thing that I think is important. Whereas a lot of the side quests will...
There's no indication.
Yeah, a lot of the side quests will very clearly have either a good ending or a bad ending, which is the kind of thing I like to see games avoid, is like not having a black and white ending.
Not all of them, though. I mean, the quest that I mentioned at the very beginning with the werewolf creature doesn't have a correct, like, morally good or bad ending. There's quite a few of them, and all of them are like, at least for me, when I was going through it and applying my own kind of morals to it, it was like, well, this one has like, they all insinuate different things, but it's never, black and white.
Yeah, I think if I know the one you're talking about, yeah, if you go through finding like everything, every little bit of detail to make the quest go on for as long as possible and get what may be the true most investigated ending, it still feels horrible.
Yeah, well, it's like any decision you make feels like not the right decision, but it's almost like which one is the least bad.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's what I'm specifically calling out as the thing I like to avoid, is having a situation where you need to question what's least bad after the fact. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying though. It's like the one that I found least bad was because it was my own set of morals. There's someone that completely different from me that would find the most like least bad ending to be a completely different kind
exactly.
of ending.
I think you picked that mission because it's the best example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many other cases in Witcher 3 where missions have a like endings that are gray and not specifically good about it. A lot of the missions in Witcher 3 have specifically better endings should you do like quote unquote the right thing. Which is I think that certainly is fine in most games, like because obviously you're playing games generally to relax. You don't want to constantly deal with moral quandaries of is it right to like,
what is this video game saying on the human condition?
Yeah, like obviously I don't want that to be most games. But having it be present in some form in different things is very fun. All right, so we'll do one more round. Wyatt, what do you got for us?
All right, as many of you know, I don't like Destiny.
Join the club.
Where is this going?
However, the most frustrating thing about Destiny is how it occasionally does something really, really cool, and then either screws it up later or never touches it again. And specifically, what I think is really, really cool that they did when Forsaken came out was, the first team that was like, there's always that big, whenever a new raid comes out, there's always that big rush to like get to the right level and get through the raid and figure out all of its mechanics and be the first fire team to do so, right? What was really cool was because of how narratively what was that raid called? Was it Last Wish? Is that what it was? I don't remember.
For Forsaken, yeah, that was the Last Wish. Right?
Last Wish. What was really cool was the first team that successfully completed Last Wish then unlocked a new strike for everyone in the community as a result of what happens in the story of Last Wish, which is such a cool bit of like world building, and it's such a cool way to tell a story to a community of people where, hey, these people that you have no relation to other than you play the same game achieved this one thing that no one else did, that then unlocked content for everyone else because of the story.
They do that with the Black Armory quest line as well, and the Scourge of the Past raid.
That is correct. However, I think things like that needs to happen more. That's besides the point. That's really, really cool. That it's this really interesting way of storytelling where like it may be something that you had nothing to do with, but the game changed because other people are in this universe with you. It makes the world, the MMO world that you're playing in, feel a lot more alive with other things going on that aren't revolving just around you. And it's so cool. And I wish either Destiny would do more of that, or other sort of like always online games would do something similar.
Well, it happened with the new not season, with the new yearly expansion that they did with Beyond Light.
I know, but just more of it, I guess. I don't know. I want more because it's such a unique way to set up a world to make it feel, like I said, to make it feel really lived in and like there's other things happening.
Is that all you have to say about Destiny?
Before I start yelling at it again, yes.
All right, great.
I was kind of opening that if anyone else had anything to comment, but I guess not. We'll just move on.
I think MMOs in general do really good at, can do really good at getting the idea across of like being part of something, like part of a larger whole. A lot of MMOs run into the issue of like the way that instantly gets broken is seeing someone running around with just like a weird username like Ninja Slayer 79 or something like that, and you just go, that's not a name. And then you're immediately taken out of it. But
that's not a real
I don't know about you guys, but seeing a person named Anna Braised Thighs does not take me out of the Emergent Destiny.
But yeah, when MMOs can work, I know Destiny doesn't quite fit the MMO definition as nicely, but when they work, especially like through raid storytelling and whatnot, you can get some really cool
Another good example of that was World of Warcraft with the Gates of Anchorage, which was a really interesting kind of like global event that kind of involved everyone in the community that changed the game in a certain way.
I mean, I think the ultimate answer to this kind of thing is Final Fantasy XIV Original, of like the reason an entire game was remade is because of the player base. Like, NoClip did a whole sequence of documentaries on it, so I don't need to go over details. You can obviously go there if you want to learn more. But like Final Fantasy XIV now, people think of like, oh, that's like the WoW competitor that's doing pretty well. Originally, it was the trash fire dumpster game that was absolutely horrible and felt like a game from 2002 that released in 2012. But because the community was passionate about Final Fantasy, and specifically something that the director has said before, Yoshida, that really sticks with me, is that the reason that game was remade is that like they knew that kind of failure in the Final Fantasy franchise could spell the end of Final Fantasy, like trust-wise. It's a classic example of like CD Projekt lost a lot of faith because of Cyberpunk, but they knew if they could rebuild that faith, people would be a lot more happy in the future. That's why people are like super excited for Final Fantasy 16. Because
so what you're saying is they're going to nuke the entirety of Night City and then rebuild it as part of the
narrative. Like that's the point I was getting to, is that like it was remade, and that is canon to the game based on events that happened in the real world, like almost going to that Defiance.
I was just about to make that connection again. Yeah,
of like events that players kind of orchestrated of the game needing to be remade in that way, and then suddenly them remaking it and it becoming really good and having a lot more power, and it being a lot more unique. I think it's just a cool little thing that happens. You could see maybe a TV show doing that. I don't think movies would ever really do it. I don't know, maybe Star Wars can prove me wrong and remake the sequel and prequel trilogies, but I doubt that.
Well, as long as Kathleen Kennedy is leading the project, then they should be fine.
Of course. All right, Alex, you got something for us to get us off of this awful train of Kathleen Kennedy?
Oh boy. Okay, let's see. Somewhat similar to the no narration. These are kind of blending together again. Actually, this kind of, I guess that's kind of Destiny as well at some points, if you're stretching. Treating lore and story like a book that you just have to read completely.
So this is a bad example.
You didn't say they all had to be good.
I did not.
Right.
I did not.
Well, it's I don't know. I might be describing it incorrectly, because I'm playing Morrowind right now, and the lack of voice acting and stuff. There's still also the fun little environmental secrets and Easter eggs and things like that. Morrowind's really a collage of what I've been saying.
Well, I think like Morrowind has the benefit of, at least with lore-wise, there are books in the world. Like you go to a bookshelf and read a book, and that's a lot more effective to me than having to open my phone and go to look my Grimoire cards on a phone app.
Yeah. Getting into the books, either in games or book adaptations of games and things like that, where lore is explored, can be interesting. Can be done absolutely horribly.
Yeah, can be done well too, though.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Halo, classic example.
Yeah, I mean, good example of having that done well, and it's not just through books, but obviously Dark Souls is like the classic example of having to read, having to take the time out of gameplay to kind of figure out what's going on. But I think the problem that Destiny had with it is that it wanted it both ways. It wanted it to have like a central story with like cutscenes and stuff like that, but it also wanted to have lore that you kind of had to hunt down and search for. And the problem is that unless you're really, really smart about it, those two types of storytelling don't mesh well together. So you'll have this like central story with like cutscenes, and it's very kind of in your face. It's very much part of like the main gameplay, but then it'll reference things and have things happen where if you're not caught up on the lore, you don't know what's going on. and it was never made clear to you that you had to do that.
Yeah.
You know, characters will pop up or villains will pop up. Perfect example, you know, not going to spoil too much, but ending of Forsaken, which I thought was probably one of the best, like, consistent stories, central stories that Destiny has had, and then it was kind of ruined
They
by the
completely
ending.
toss it out.
Yeah, no, it was.
Oh.
Don't even. No, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop right there.
We would. There's so many tangents that could happen about Destiny right now, but I mean, I get frustrated when any game does that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's just it wanted it both ways. It wanted to have a nice kind of like central story, but then also all this lore that you had to hunt down. And again, that traditional narrative and that like having to hunt down the information and the lore and everything. Those again, unless it's done well, those two don't mix together very well. So,
all right, Brett.
All right.
I feel Brett in this Chili's tonight.
Good.
Yummy.
So I don't know the right word for this either. So I'm going to go into another driveling explanation again. But
that's what we do here.
One of, and there is only one example of this that I can think of. Movies knowing that they are movies, books knowing that they are books, games knowing that they are games. They are different things. But a game knowing that it's a game, if you do it right, is pretty awesome. And like everybody knows this, so this is not, unfortunately a spoiler anymore. But like Psycho Mantis making me put my controller on the floor and then telling me that he's going to move it towards the screen and then the controller vibrates. That's adorable, and I love it. And him telling me that he's going to read my memory and tell me that I like playing Suikoden or whatever is on the PS1's memory card, like that is awesome. And nothing else can do that. Like no movie character can look at you and be like, "Oh, I know you like this movie," because there's going to be like 60 people in an audience or whatever, and it's going to be completely different for all of them. But that weird like art form of the canvas being a thing that like can have other things saved to it that could possibly be made by the same company, and having them interact in that sort of way. Like I can't think of any other examples of it, but maybe you guys can. But like, you always hear about it, but then you experience something like Psycho Mantis yourself, and you go, it just puts a smile on my face, man. It's so cool. It's so cool.
I also love. I think this is Metal Gear Solid 3, where you're fighting one of the bosses. You're fighting. He's an old man, and if you just leave your console alone, or you crack it open and you mess with the internal clock, the man will just die of old age.
Yep. If you leave your console alone for 7 days once you start that boss fight, he just dies.
That's amazing.
Or
that's
like
amazing.
I said, if you go in and mess with the internal clock and like trick it, it's fantastic.
I don't know. I think it's far more effective when you haven't played the game in like 6 months. You turn it on and suddenly the boss you were fighting is dead, and you're like, "What?"
That's amazing.
It's just wild. Yeah, super cool.
And that laid the groundwork for the horrible time blocks that we see today in all of our favorite mobile games. So,
thanks, Kojima.
Yeah, going back to what Barb was talking about, I would add Nier does similar things. Yoko Taro in general tends to lean towards that kind of storytelling. I'm not going to spoil what it is because it's pretty late into Nier Automata, so I'm not going to say the specific circumstance. But there is a moment where it goes like, "Hey, player, you're doing a thing right now. What do you want to do?" And yeah, that's always super fun when it's specifically worked into the story. And again, like I mentioned that with Bravely Default earlier, is Bravely Default also kind of acknowledges that the player is a thing at a certain point, and it's very interesting to see.
Another good example, Control does that.
Oh, true.
It's way more subtle about it. Well, it is and it isn't, but the main character is basically describing how there's this other, like, just being this thing that helps her along, that kind of aids her in, whatever she's doing. And again, you don't make that connection at first, but after a while you're like, oh, right, They're probably talking about
Yeah,
me.
it's like
Oh,
eventually you start to realize that she's just kind of describing what the player is doing, and then you're like, huh.
yeah, and oftentimes it's like when because if you go back and replay it again, you'll notice like whenever she addresses you, they often try and have her look directly into the camera because she's kind of looking directly at you. They do that a lot as well. Not to the point where it's very obvious, but like they do it enough where it kind of stands out in the back of your mind and it gets you thinking about it a little bit.
All right, Wyatt, I need your last one. I'm saving mine to end us on a nice comfy note. I don't know what you're about to pull out, and it's making me afraid.
Well, as we alluded to earlier, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I will say 99% of the side quests in that game are the most boring garbage that I've ever seen. There's literally just one where you kill rats.
Are you telling me you don't want to play Whack-A-Box more?
Some exceptions like Whack-A-Box. However, there was one side quest that goes on and on and on, and it was super annoying. But there was a really cool moment where they asked you to make certain decisions, and the outcome that you'll get from those decisions are based on how much you've used certain materia and how leveled up your gear is. So it can kind of and it comes out of nowhere. They don't use this in any other part of the game, so it's a huge surprise when it happens. But certain outcomes to that side quest will only occur if your materia is like a higher or lower level. And I love being able to bring in the player's like current stats into making a decision. That's more than just like it's more gameplay related, and it's not something like, oh, in Mass Effect, have you been making like Renegade or have you been making Paragon decisions? It's more of like the nitty gritty sort of systems, and specifically in this case, it's combat systems and how that can influence the story and not just what choice you make in the moment, which I thought was really cool.
Absolutely. Yakuza is another franchise that does that fairly often in side quests. If you'll have like moments where a classic one is one of the Yakuza side quests. You're talking to someone who you learn later is a member of the National Diet, which is essentially the lawmaking group in Japan, and you have a conversation with him about what a fair tax rate is, and if you learn things from either the game world or real life Japanese history, you can suggest to him the proper thing that's happened in Japan of like the tax has steadily risen to be kind of not quite absurdly high, but pretty high, by like raising 1% every 5 years.
Oh,
It's just a fun little thing. And there's of course like bits where you need to get someone a plushie from a vending machine, but you might have gotten that plushie earlier by doing certain things. So these cute little moments.
It's really about like decision making that's involving more systems than just picking a decision or like kind of judging the choices you made leading up to it, but it's more like incorporating gameplay systems into it, which
it's particularly effective too when it only happens once in a game. Like I think that's what really makes it stand out too, is it's not something that's consistent. It'll happen once, hit you out of nowhere, and then you'll never see it again and be like, huh.
Like in something like recent example, Cyberpunk does that, where you can make certain decisions based on like if you have a certain skill that's like ranked up enough, but that happens that's a pretty common occurrence in main missions and side missions. But in something like Final Fantasy, it only happens once during this one excruciatingly long side quest where it just comes in out of nowhere.
They got to throw something in there. All right. Anything else to say on that topic, anyone? Great. All right.
no.
So I want to end us off by giving a major acknowledgement to all the games that we're talking a lot about non-traditional storytelling and like philosophy and very unique ideas. I want to give a shout out to all the games that don't do that. Because sometimes all a game needs to be is escapism. And man, I've been having a lot of fun playing Earth Defense Force 5, and that game is nothing but proper cheese. And
It's a playable B movie, basically.
It is Starship Troopers, except when you shoot, you can pilot a giant mech with a pile driver, and that's all. Sometimes that's all you need in a video game. Yeah, just the games that don't try to necessarily do more. I think a lot of the time people will consider those to be lesser than those games that are trying to make like a big philosophical statement. And I just fundamentally don't agree. I think there is plenty of room to have the greatest B movie game that exists right alongside things like The Last of Us that are pushing ways to do like incredibly cinematic storytelling, and then we just have something like Thomas Was Alone, where you're a box that scrolls across a platformer level. So, yeah, just big shout out to games being very unique, and the games that know what they are and don't try to do more.
Yeah,
certainly have their place.
And you can make that argument with any type of media, right? I mean, for movies, it's like, yeah, it's really important to have these movies that have really interesting allegories or saying interesting things, like something like Parasite. But then it's also just as okay to watch Marvel movie number 2567B, where there's a bunch of CGI stuff punching each other, and they're both incredibly valid as as existing in the same
Yep.
type of media.
Never feel bad for liking something that either other people don't like or don't see the meaning in, because look, Ace Combat games are a lot of fun.
As long as you get something out of that experience, that's all that matters.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God.
totally. And
Look,
if
I don't
you're
think you need to get anything out of it. Just
that's the thing. If you're not into like huge, brain teasing philosophical storylines about torturing characters and commenting on the human condition, dude, that is why like people can all those YouTube essays can lie to you as much as they want. Games are meant for people to have fun playing them. Does every game have to be necessarily fun? No, it can be difficult on purpose. It can be this like one aspect can be stupid on purpose to make you think about something. But as a baseline, games should be fun. Just go snipe people on Halo 3 for like
yeah,
45 minutes. And
games
you'll feel
that
better
don't
about yourself.
games that aren't fun only work because most games are fun. So
Exactly.
So yeah, I just wanted to end us on that note and just make sure that like if you're a game dev and you're making a game that is just about playing, I don't know, solitaire, and maybe the solitaire has dragons involved and there's no greater story there, you're just playing solitaire with dragons, that's totally valid. I'd play some solitaire with dragons. So
I don't know why that got me in the mood for Mahjong.
Mahjong.
Everyone is always in the mood for Mahjong.
I mean, look, boomer shooters are still a huge market, and those games aren't about nothing other than just acquiring some really cool looking guns and shooting things with them.
And they know it. It's perfect.
And they fully embrace it.
All right. With that, we've done it. We've made it to the end of another episode. In fact, we made it to the end of our 50th episode. And guess what that means?
It's time for shoutouts.
It means absolutely nothing. The 50th episode doesn't matter at all. But yes, Alex, you're right. It is time for shoutouts.
Nothing.
You win nothing.
Look,
you lose.
When we get to 100, then you get something special. At 100, something special happens.
You're all right. That's a
Even
promise.
make it to 100.
Oh, our viewer base is going to remember that.
Oh,
Eric,
I'm sure they will.
I'm looking at you.
All right, that's right. We're to shout
I really
outs.
hope he's in the chat.
You know what, Alex? That means you get to do shoutouts first.
Okay. You know what I almost entirely forgot today? Happy Pi Day. On the day that we're recording this.
Oh, I did completely forget about that.
It's pie.
Now I want pie.
Happy Pi Day, everyone.
I don't have any ingredients to make a pie. I know I'm sad.
Well, that's entirely on you, Ryan.
Yeah, that is. We even went to the grocery store earlier.
We did.
Right.
I made an egg pie. I have a quiche with me.
Close enough.
Great.
I'll let it slide.
Oh, now I want key lime.
All right, Brett, you got a shout out.
Shout out to Wild Arms 5 for being better in literally every single possible facet than Wild Arms 3, which made me very angry. But 5 is making me very happy. So there you go.
Whoa. All right. Look, I gotta give a shout out to these. The grocery store earlier, I picked up some dark chocolate espresso beans. Haven't had those in like years. Just as good as I remember them to be.
Nice.
Those beans never get old.
Those beans never get old. All right, Wyatt, what do you got for us?
Seeing as I have been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I do need to give a shout out to the best feature in the entire game, the darts minigame.
Oh, you've been waiting the whole time.
You've held that in your back pocket for a while now.
But I didn't mess that one up.
Watch out for next week when our episode is entirely about darts minigames.
And
there
Ryan
any-
isn't joking.
You know what's going to be?
Are
at
there
the top
any in
of that list?
Yakuza?
Oh yeah, there are many darts minigames in Yakuza. Every Yakuza game has
Perfect.
a darts minigame.
We can actually literally do that.
My
All right, Wyatt. Anything else about your darts minigame?
No.
Right.
All right. Well,
We'll
that
leave it there.
means it's time for us to go. As always, podcast airs at 7 a.m. Tuesday mornings or live on Twitch Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a good day, everyone. Check out the YouTube if you haven't and sub there so we can get numbers because we would like to be able to change the channel like link so that it actually says Double One Radio instead of a bunch of letters that are random. So that'd be great. On that note, have a good night, everyone. Good morning.
Oh, and I guess the combat in Final Fantasy VII is pretty good too.
Guten Nougat.
But not as good as the darts minigame.
And certainly not as good as Gouda.
Right?
But I mean, what is at the end of the day?
Gouda has risen to be probably my favorite cheese.
Really?
I mean, look, as someone who grew up in Cabot, Vermont, Cabot